Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much to the UK vocal improv team and the volunteers and all the people who participated in this event. Thank you so much. You're amazing. Um, as Henrietta was saying, we should rather play music together rather than talking about it. This is true. So I'm going to be short as possible. So Yaka invited me to talk about the research that I'm focusing on right now. So it's about how to integrate what we're doing as a course in the post-secondary education. And because I believe that if we had this such work and such possibility to explore this and collaborative vocal improvisation in universities, for example. I'm focusing on universities. I'm going to explain to you why. I believe that we wouldn't be in this world, but that's what I believe. Yes. Utopia. Okay, so I have two questions for you. Have you ever been encouraged to express, tell, or connect to your personal story to create a body of work in your studies? You can show your hand. Hey. Okay. Privileged. If yes, how many of you were encouraged to do so in music studies? Okay, so you see it's incredible, the difference. Okay. Then I have another question. In your academic studies, so for those who did like a bachelor or master or PhD, have you been encouraged to improvise? Oh, less people. Again, a few people like ish. Okay. And if yes, how many were encouraged to do so in music studies? Oh, more in music studies this time. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to talk briefly about how I ended up doing this research because I am not an academic. So, and I was relating to what you were saying earlier on. So what happened to me is like in 2017, I'm a voice teacher. So I studied voice technique for a long time in France, in the US. And in 2017, I started to have a mental breakdown because I was focusing too much on technique and I clearly disconnected from my passion of singing. So each time I was singing, I was like, oh, what do I do with my larynx? What do I do with... and I was lost. And I was teaching, and I was like, well, why do I do that? Like, why do I teach people to free their voice if they don't know what to say or if they don't know themselves? So I was wondering about all this new tendency of teaching voice with a kind of evidence-based pedagogy, which is really related to science. It's incredible because with science now, we learn so much about our instrument, so much. And vocal technique works very well. But I just was wondering, what's the point to just free your voice, talking about freedom, release tension, and also it's great, but I think if you don't do the personal work at the same time, which is knowing yourself and working on the trauma and all of that, I think that we're missing something because releasing voice because it's just like, oh, you can do this with your larynx, this with your breathing patterns or whatever will free your voice. I'm kind of like, yes, but then I believe we should relate this with your personal story, personal journey, emotional journey, and not disconnecting this only with just the muscles. But I think it's much deeper than that. So in 2018, 19, I had the opportunity to pursue a master's degree in music, but specialized in voice pedagogy in contemporary music. So it's the only one in the US with that title. So it's the only one that for the application just require you to sing anything you want. Because I wanted to study at Berkeley in Boston, and they said, well, you have to sing 2 arias. I'm not a classical singer. Like, I'm not going to sing that. And they're like, yeah, but you have to, otherwise it won't work. So I was like, oh, okay. So that was the only master's degree where they were like, oh, you're a pop singer. Fine. Just sing whatever you want. I was like, that's great. So I've been accepted, obviously. And the problem is that after 2 months there, I was so bored because it was first of all, I'm French originally, so I'm from France. And being in the US, in Virginia, because it's in Virginia, in a very, very small town, whoa, there was a kind of a shock culturally. So it was very hard for me to be there, to be exposed to racism that way that I've never experienced before. It was very, very hard for me. And being there, I was like, whoa, they're talking about technique, contemporary music, but actually they were always referring to classical music all the time. So I was like, whoa. So after 2 months, I was like, okay, I will need to get out of here as fast as possible. So which I've done, but I finished it in 1 year and a half. And but what happened is that after 3 months, they gave the opportunity to students to host workshops in the conservatory. And so I started to host circle singing workshops. And after a week of training with classically trained singers, they were just amazed by that. And because for me, circle singing, I've been introduced to circle singing with Guelph in France, like many years ago. So I was using circle singing always with the people I was working with, like musical theater students. I was always using this, but I didn't get what it meant. It was just more like for me a way to make people connect with each other, to release the tension between the pressure on their shoulders. I always realized that circle singing was good for that, but I didn't really get the deeper meaning of it. And then, so the professors there asked me to teach their students. So I taught music therapy students, in music education as well. And they were so amazed by it. Then I was really shocked they were amazed by it. I was like, but you didn't know that? And they were like, no. But then I thought, but Bobby McFerrin is American. So I thought that in America, it was kind of a common practice. And I realized that nobody knew it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wrote a paper about that, saying why? And why don't we introduce this kind of method in academia? And then my research teacher said, you should do a PhD about it. And I said, no way. I want to get out of academia right away. And what happened is that I went to Omega. You know who've been there? Circle Songs School. Yeah, awesome. That was an incredible experience. I was just, wow. I was blown away. And then I realized after this experience, I was like, I want to live in this world. That's what I would love to. And at the same time, so I said no to the PhD, but then someone from Canada. So right now I'm in Guelph, Canada, in Ontario, but there is an institute specialized in improvisation. And that teacher there knew me from voice technique workshop. And she basically said, well, they're searching for PhDs in this institution about improvisation. And I was like, oh, shoot. And then they're like, you should probably meet them. And so I did it. I flew to Canada and I met the director and he said, I think you're a good fit for our program. And I was like, oh no. Because I was like, I don't want to do academic studies. Like it's really, but I was like, it's in my path, obviously. So this is how I live. I just follow the kind of like the wind. I don't know how to explain that, the lead. So I ended up being in Canada in 2021. And since then, I'm trying to fly, and I'm trying to, to accept what life offers me rather than what I want. And since then, I realized that I'm so privileged, as we said earlier on, so privileged to follow that path, even though it's super, super hard because I love to be in action. I love to be with people. I love to connect with people. And doing a PhD is so isolating because you just spend hours reading and you need to write. And it's just so frustrating, for me at least. Especially talking about collaborative work. It's just like, this is super frustrating. But I'm getting there. So this is the institute where I'm in. We're only like approximately 20 students. And you have 2 years of courses. And we learned about the core concepts in critical studies and improvisation. We talk about the research methods, pedagogy lab, and art-based community making. So there is the first year is more about like really theory and research, and the second year is more about creating link with community. And the objective is like basically to they try to challenge the academy, the academia. They really try to challenge it. So they are kind of like, oh, if you want to do like a circus tent, because there was a story, I think it's from England actually. There is a researcher who did his PhD was actually a circus tent with like multiple text on it. And I was like, whoa, that's fun. But then they're like, oh, you can do a practice, but you still need to do a dissertation. So basically, they ask you to do double work, being like, oh, practice is fine, but we still need 150 pages of dissertation. So for me, it's like, I really like this quote from Bobby McFerrin. Music for me is like a spiritual journey down into the depth of my soul. And that's what I was saying earlier on about the relation between vocal technique and singing. I have the feeling that it's actually a relationship with your soul, okay? And it's not only like the divide, because sometimes we kind of divide the mind and the spirit, and I feel like it's, for me, it's a whole thing. So that's why I would love students at university level to really embrace music as an experience as well, versus as an art form or a product. Because right now in university level, I mean, at least from my background and my experience, is that in universities, we are focusing so much on proficiency, mastery, technicity, competition, which is basically the value of our system, like neoliberalism system. But I'm kind of like, why don't we have a course where we could have the space to basically experience music as an experience? And this process of thinking is actually Musica do Circolo. Like, for those who have done Musica do Circolo, this is basically what they're saying as well. It's just the idea of, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have like focusing on product or the art form, which is like art form will be more related to like knowing the language, so music theory and, you know, all these courses, and product versus like the music industry. I'm not saying we shouldn't have all of those, but I'm just saying that right now in universities, from my experience, it's not the case all over the world, but in the Western world, mostly universities are focusing on those two parts, but not necessarily here about the experience. And that's why I believe that creating a course with collaborative vocal improv could address that. So improvisation, I like this definition with an artistic activities and practices that are spontaneous, personal, local, immediate, expressive, ephemeral, and even accidental. I don't know if you like this one, but does it speak to you? Yeah? So it's a book called The Fierce Urgency of Now, written by R.J. Ebler and Daniel Fischlin. They are the creators of the Institute I'm in. And George Lipsitz. I was thinking about you, like George Lipsitz. Do you know George Lipsitz? Yeah, very interesting researcher as well about all of this topic. Now, definition. Whoa. So, this morning, we were supposed to be with all of you, but we ended up having a very intense discussion all together about what is collaborative vocal improvisation. So that's the definition we did with this morning. So I don't know if you like it or not. A co-creative practice of a cappella singing with a shared awareness of form, pulse, and mode, weaving personal expression into collectivity. What do you think about it? Yeah? Robert? I see the eyebrows. After the panel, I think so, yeah. We'll keep your question for after if you want. So just to relate to what, we were talking about free improvisation. For me, collaborative vocal improvisation is very different. So I also distinguish this to sound singing, which is a term that Chris Donnelly, he's a researcher as well about all those topics. And for him, sound singing is, you can read, it's really like everything that is like noise, non-musical, and not singing. So he wrote a book called Voices Found, Free Jazz and Singing. It's a very interesting book. And so for Chris Tonelli, this is what is for improvisation for him. But my sense is that if we want to integrate such work in universities, my sense is that if we are too far away from what they offer, I think it's going to be harder. So my sense is that collaborative vocal improvisation is still close enough, I believe, because we still do the same, we use the same vocabulary, bass line, we were doing like a percussion, harmonies, we're using modes, we're using like scales, we're using all those kind of things. So I believe my sense is that it would be easier to integrate such work than doing sound singing work, which is, and I'm not saying that during a course like I would like to create, we won't use sound singing, of course not. But the idea is it's not going to be the primary focus, basically. So the good news is that the CVI community is expanding and is getting more structured, which is a good news for academic people because they like when it's structured. So we have a good argument now to say, well, there's things happening all over. So here in the Western world, with the Well, which is an incredible initiative. And there are plenty of, I just mentioned a few of them because there are like many of things, but happening in France. We have Music for People, which is an American method that is also based in Montreal, that actually, they kind of train more musicians, like instrumentalists, rather than singers, but you can also be a singer and be part of this. But it's a very interesting training. Music at School, of course. Soko Song School, we have a lot of things happening right now, and I believe, that's my sense, and I'm happy to see all those people in this room. I feel that there is a momentum right now around this topic, and I feel like that's the argument I make as well, is that to say that I believe that for universities, they shouldn't miss that momentum. And I agree with what you said earlier on, that there is an urgent need for transformation in higher education, especially with the AI that's happening. I think it's huge. So, we ask mostly students to write in universities. With the AI, I believe it's going to be a complex relationship with writing and the AI. So I believe this is much more interesting than to do with students. Because I read somewhere that the only thing that AI cannot do right now, which is, I say right now, because we never know, but for now, they're saying that improvisation is the thing that AI cannot do. Yeah, so I'm going to pass this one. So the idea is that, for me, the voice, why the voice? Because I'm a singer, obviously, so I'm focusing on the vocal work. But the idea is that for me, using your voice creates a different relationship with your body than just playing piano. So I really, really sense that the use of your vocal folds has a relationship with your well-being. That's my perception. And there is a research happening right now in the US about that topic. So I can't wait to read the results. But I really feel that using your vocal folds will help you know yourself better and increase your self-confidence. And I think that's why I believe it would be very important to integrate this. And so this is what I did about the CVI. Why do I think it would be valuable? It's because it creates the sense of community with an inclusive pedagogy. Because what I love with the work we're doing is that there's no musical style that is required. And it's so important because right now in conservatories, it's either classical or jazz music, mostly. We have a little bit of like, oh, you can sing pop or rock, but, we feel this kind of hierarchy of, classical, jazz is okay, pop music starts to be like, ugh, too simple. So my sense is that I would love just people to express who they are from exactly what Robert said earlier on, saying that where they come from, which means you come with your background, you come with your culture. And I live in Canada right now, and Canada is it's a country like full of immigrants. It's mostly immigrants people, you know? So I'm kind of like, if we just welcome people with their culture rather than just imposing a culture, I think it will already like, we will be less in a fight mode. And so that's what I believe, that giving space for such work would be very valuable for that reason. And you have a sense of collaboration. We're going to focus on deep listening, and also progressive pedagogy. This is what Bell Hooks, I don't know if you know Bell Hooks, an incredible author. I really highly recommend for those who don't know her. She passed away recently. She talked about love, basically. And I really, really believe that collaborative vocal improvisation can really can be a point of entry to bring more love in the way we teach, and to receive, accept people the way they are. That's maybe utopia again, but that's the way I sense it. And it also participates toward emancipation for students, because I really, like, for myself and my personal experience, like, doing all that work really helped me to just be more confident as a musician. Like, truly, like, it's a huge, huge difference. And now I allow myself even to speak in front of you right now. So I truly believe that all this work is a deep work. It's not just only musical. It goes at a deeper level. There's no sort of play and joy. Woo! Playfulness. Woo! Having fun when you learn at universities, it's kind of a concept that doesn't exist really much. It seems like it has to be serious, otherwise you're not learning, which is just, for me, like an interesting concept. But so I believe that, again, collaborative vocal improvisation can bring joy in the classroom. Yeah. So of course we have like academic constraints, teachers' fears of improvisation, because there's a lack of teachers training. They always say, oh, but we already have a busy schedule, so we cannot add something on top of that. The way academia is structured, in terms of departments, they have their budget. So I would love to have a CVI interdisciplinary course. We're having like offering this course as an elective, and anyone like who's studying engineering, whatever, would like to take that course, they will be welcome. You don't need to be like a musician or study music to be part of such a course. So creating also, like, breach the departments, that would be nice. But they also like the banking model of education. This is Paulo Freire. I don't know if you know this. So the banking model is basically that we have the teacher who knows and the students who don't know. And so we're going to give them the knowledge, which creates, it seems like, oh yeah, it could be nice. But actually, I talking with a lot of teachers and professors, they are scared of that because they are afraid of losing control in their classroom. And again, I was talking the mastery technicity competition. It's another model, so you have to convince them that it will be valuable. And the grading system is, how do you grade such work? So my sense is that if we take the students where they at the beginning, and we ask them, what are you here for? What do you want to learn from this? And actually grading them on where they at the end. Because not specifically at like, oh, you need to know that. No, where you're from, where you're coming from, then at the end. So for example, if you arrive and you're an incredible improviser, and at the end you didn't change anything, that wouldn't necessarily mean for me that you have a good grade. Because the idea is to push your limits, going out of your comfort zone, offering something new. So that's the way I could think about it. And now, of course, the Western canons, really like focusing on classical music again and again. It's interesting because conservatories are like, no, but we made some efforts. We're doing now jazz department. well, this is still very limited, very limited. And so, yeah, I think you could address that. So, I have 1 minute to finish. Okay. So, this is short. Okay. So basically, my research is I actually studied all the way in. So I've done the whole training with Rhiannon, and I've done the whole training with Musica do Circolo. So it's mostly ethnography, and I'm just gonna basically like reflect on my own experience about this. And so I'm gonna write a dissertation about it, and I'm releasing right now an EP called ADN, as me as a practitioner and as a musician, because I want to also show what like those programs did to me. And so this music that I have in my EP is very like still pop, because I'm coming from this pop world, pop electro music with a lot of loops of improvisation on top. And the idea is for me is to connect people who are listening to like pop music, like, you know, more popular sounds, and offering them a bridge between like songs that they will listen to in this disc, and then improvising with them live, and creating new songs live. That's what I want. And so it's just for them to be exposed to improvisation. Because I feel like if we stay in this little pocket of people who've been convinced already, right, that improvisation is a powerful tool, I believe that if we stay in this our little bubble, how can we talk about social change if we stay in our little privileged bubble? So I believe that denying people, like, you know, mostly like they're saying like, I think it's 90% of people listen to pop music. Jazz music represents 4% of streaming. So it's just a reality. And if we are just denying it and being, no, but jazz music is so much better, you're like, well, but you're still putting people apart. And my sense is that if we don't bridge our world with the other people's world, we cannot talk about social change, because it's still, and academia is the same. Like, you know, my director, I'm going to finish with it because I know it's a transition. My director is disagree on this. For him, he said to me that improvisation should stay very experimental. And I want to make it more accessible. And he said to me, well, I disagree on that. Because for him, make it very like experimental is actually what you were saying earlier on, is just to confront the system, and to be like anti-system, and to fight against the system, which means that you're fighting about the structure, you're fighting about this common sounds are acceptable and those are not. So for him, if you make it accessible, you're playing the game already. Oh, wow. Let's think about it. I disagree on that, but this is what he said. Yeah, so let's see this. Yeah, so the question I have, is this one? The question I have still is that, is it relevant to create a curriculum where we're gonna ask people to be in the same room, at the same time, knowing that mostly now universities want you to create online courses? And financially, how do we do that? Because I don't think such a course can have like 100 students, right? So it means that it's going to be like a smaller amount of people. And is it relevant right now? But because most of universities are facing an economical crisis, so is it relevant? And that's the question I'm asking to myself. And again, experimental versus popular. Should we stay like more experimental, or leading toward to be more accessible? And the relation between individualism, social connection, and social justice. Because when we talk about this kind of work, I already had critics saying, yeah, but you work on a very individual level. And I had a discussion with Rhiannon, and Rhiannon said, why don't we have to oppose all the things? It's everything. If you work on your personal level, it means that you will also be more inclined to connect with people. That's my sense. So it's like, okay, but if I don't work on myself, how can I connect with someone else with all my anger inside and all my, it's like, I feel it's just, I believe it's all connected. So, and academics, that's my feeling, is sometimes they like to, trying to find those words that are very fancy, and they create those kind of boxes, and then you're like, yeah, but I think it can be everything, and we don't need to oppose it all the time, to oppose all the time. So my sense is that I think CVI can play a role in this bridging, and just to finish, like Vocal River with Rhiannon all the way in is focusing more on the individual, on as your musicianship skills and other stuff. But Musica de Circolo is more like, focusing on the collectivity. And I believe that if we combine those two, we have a great recipe to offer us a good course in music education, or even in education in general, because I think it will be open to more than just music education. Thank you so much for your attention.